Welcome to Taking the Myth, your topical discussion show. I'm Stephen Knight, and joining me for the first Taking the Myth of 2021, it's Iram Ramzan. Iram, how the fuck are you?
I'm alright, Chuck. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really good. I've so far managed to avoid the Rona. You had it a little while before Christmas. Survived and thrived is the question. Have you got any underlining side effects?
Well, I think I'm even more fabulous than before.
It's improved you.
Yeah, and made me more modest as well. Absolutely fine. No other issues to report on. Although I am, slightly more impatient when it comes to idiots. I don't know if that's COVID or just general, but yeah.
Well, lots to talk about. We've had a regime change.
Really? I thought it was a very quiet start to the new year.
We've had a regime change, a attempt at an insurrection, a once sensible Muslim reformer going slightly off the rails, policeman being charged for means.
Come on, I'm not that bad.
Yeah, Joe Biden attempting to install his woke utopia. So there's lots to touch on. It's an important thing I think we want to mention before we get stuck in, and that's about the activist Zara Kay, Australian activist. She's currently in trouble in Tanzania. I mean, I think we've actually both been in the same room with her before. I've met her a couple of times. I think I marched.
Yeah, I met her at one of the secular conferences. She's came out openly as an ex-Muslim. She decided to campaign. One of those extrovert type people, very fresh to the scene and really just wants to get stuck in and campaign and help other people in her situation. And basically originally from Tanzania, but an Australian citizen now. I think she went back to Tanzania some time ago. And then she was arrested and prevented from leaving the country. Apparently there's not a clear indication of the charges against her. But the Council of Ex-Muslim Forum did say that she was charged over social media posts on Twitter that were deemed critical of Tanzania's president, which she wrote several months ago, and then using a SIM card not registered in her name. I mean, God, she sounds like a monster.
Yeah, lock her up.
Wow. Lock her up for those dodgy SIM cards.
Yeah, like I say,
she's apparently released on bail, but her passport's been confiscated, so she can't go anywhere. But I've met her. You've met her. She just seems like a very sort of happy-go-lucky type of person who just wanted to come out openly as an ex-Muslim and just make it easier for others to do the same.
Yeah, so she's one of the founders of Faithless Hijabi, and she's very, as you say, very outspoken. I'd say quite courageous. It's always difficult to do these things as somebody who was once part of a community that she's now criticising in a sense. So and this is as close to a social justice warrior feminist as I get, but I do tend to think these things are a lot more difficult if you're female. I have a bit of a soft spot for courageous female dissidents. For some reason, I always think it's women who change the tide on these issues. But it's deeply concerning because I think one of the main suspicions here is a lot of these charges relating to sort of SIM cards and citizenships have been trumped up in order to basically punish her for her comments on the government there and or Islam. And she herself has claimed via a few tweets, she's out on bail, as you mentioned, that they have repeatedly asked her about her faith, about her comments, about her faith, why she's left her faith. They seem to be leaning on this aspect. So I don't care if it's against the law there to fuck about with the SIM card not registered in your name. This citizen issue regarding her passport seems like a procedural bit of nonsense anyway, and I certainly don't think it justifies her having to make daily trips to a police station, being kept in a cell at one point from her own account, and not knowing when or if she can return back to either Australia or the UK or whether she currently resides at the moment. So ex-Muslim Council of Britain, they seem to be the chief proprietors of banging the drum about this. I've spread as much as I can about it. I put it on my blog as well. I'll put it in the show notes. So I think the best thing anyone can do about this. No one's asking for money or contributions. We're just asking you to keep it in the media cycle, keep it in the social media feeds so that it doesn't disappear. And she obviously gets the attention she deserves until this is resolved, because it can't be pleasant, can it? She must be very, very worried at the moment. And for what? For tweeting a few things that are critical of Islam and the Tanzanian government on Twitter, and maybe having a SIM card she shouldn't. I just feel this is a little crazy.
I think as well, you know, in the initial stages when she was arrested and held and then released, I think a little bit of misinformation was going around on Twitter, because when she was out on bail, she posted a picture or something of her eating cheesecake, and I think someone suggested that she's all right, because, you know, if you're eating a cheesecake, all is right.
Yes,
in the world.
There is no possible scenario where cake is acceptable if you're in a tricky situation. I think that's
if anything,
that's a
if
fact.
you're going through shit, you need cake. Okay, let them eat cake. Let us eat cake.
Yeah.
Damn it, we need cake. So yeah, and I think the people who originally tried to suggest that have apologized and said, look, we're really sorry for that. And I get it, you know, sometimes it's very difficult on social media because you have all sorts of information flying around and you just don't know what's true or not, what's actually happening. But yeah, let this be a lesson to you all. Just stick to your actual SIM card. Don't mess around with your phone. Don't mess around with SIM cards.
One for bros, one for hoes, isn't it?
I've got hoes in different area codes.
All right, so yeah, hoping for a speedy resolution on the whole issue surrounding Zara Kay. And as soon as we know she's safe, the better, really, I suppose. So there's nothing else we can do at the moment apart from keep banging the drum.
Well, I also heard that, you know, in Tanzania, it's very rare for charges to stick like this. So I'm hoping that it'll just be another case of where, you know, police have been heavy-handed and realise it's a losing battle just to release her quietly. So yeah, fingers crossed on that front.
That's the whole point of getting international attention on the issue. Make it so that they're under the watchful eye of the world and the human rights groups and the local media, so that they have to be very careful about whatever steps they make next.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we really should start with... I mean, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but the attempted insurrection in the United States of America. There's so many parts surrounding this and so much opinion, a lot of it nuanced, a lot of it just insane. There's been a lot of repercussions, but some people, overwhelmingly pro-Trump in nature and character, tried to storm the Capitol during the certification of votes process, literally tried to prevent democracy from happening in real time because they were under some insane delusion that the election had been stolen from them via voter fraud. This was not a blip or an accident. This was an intentional act. This was a wide-ranging conspiracy, including multi-million-dollar companies, senior members of the Democratic Party. I think even Venezuela and China were thrown in the pot at one point to steal the election from Donald Trump, who won by a landslide, in his own words. Now, there's a lot to talk about here in terms of how much Donald Trump has fostered this environment, how much he's inspired it, how much culpability we place in his direction on the acts we saw at the Capitol. But first of all, I mean, what was your thoughts as you saw these absolute thuggish terrorists attempting to gain access to senators and members of Congress, even in the Capitol?
Well, I was actually at work, and then I remember looking up at the TV and thinking, wow, there's a lot of people out there. Wonder what they're doing. And then next minute, they've just stormed the Capitol building, which I don't know if you've ever been to DC, Stephen, but I have, and yeah, you're just it's
Aren't you on the no-fly list? I'm surprised they let you in.
Well, you know, I have friends in high places. But yeah, it's notoriously difficult to get in there. There's security everywhere, and I was just amazed they managed to get inside and cause that much havoc. And then obviously, you know, somebody died. And astonishingly, the National Guard wasn't deployed. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the Guard was deployed for the BLM protests, right?
Right, yes, the National Guard was. So there's a whole debate now about whether or not the measures taken in terms of security were sufficient. I suppose a lot of it comes down to hindsight. I think as well, before this point, BLM protests had been going on consistently throughout the country, and destruction, violence, civil unrest was a guaranteed result of them. There's a good breakdown of this on Sam Harris's podcast, actually. He has some security experts on there who kind of lay out why they were in the situation they were during, the Capitol attack versus BLM protest. And a great point is that obviously BLM is notoriously anti-police. They are basically opposing the police. That is one of their raison d'etres.
Sure, but these lot weren't exactly showing respect to any authority either.
I agree.
I suppose you can, like you said, they are notoriously anti-police. So in a way, I guess you can understand why the Guard was deployed, because there's going to be trouble there. But my God, this was just on a whole another level. And they're egged on by Trump as well. Whether it was incitement to insurrection, that is a debate.
I'm really, I'm not saying this isn't a difficult subject. I have my mind made up, and I appreciate it is very complex, and I will hear arguments to the contrary on my view, and I will probably accept some of it. I may even agree people who disagree with me have a point, but
I'm not sure charging him with incitement of insurrection was quite the right move. I mean, does he deserve to be impeached? Yeah, probably does. But on that, probably not, because America has a First Amendment as well, and you have to be absolutely clear when someone is inciting violence.
I think that's it. I think there's a basic confusion over definition of terms here. So this is as far as I will go. When I have watched Donald Trump for weeks and weeks and weeks, every time he gets near a microphone, tells the country and the world that democracy has been stolen from them. They've had one of the most precious values in civil society taken away from them by evil people who want to cheat their way into power. That's what he's telling them every time he gets near a microphone. And if you believe that, imagine if you believed that was true and you believed it with every fibre of your being, what would you be willing to do for it? It's no surprise to me whatsoever that people storm the Capitol. It's funny, all of a sudden, people are beginning to understand the link between beliefs and action. Isn't it weird that people can understand if someone has a real strong conviction in something, they will act in adverse ways if that belief is extreme? So
he's definitely encouraging them.
I will go absolutely as far to say is Donald Trump shares culpability for that. I will say he inspired a lot of people to do that. I will say he's partly responsible for what happened on the Capitol. What you can't say is that it reaches the legal definition of incitement, because it does not. Like you say, you have to be very clear. He has to have said, go to the Capitol, break in, stop them. He has to. The definition is you have to openly call for criminal activity, which he didn't. And I don't even think he thought that that's what they were going to do. I just think he's so fucking stupid. It didn't possibly occur to him that his words, as one of the most powerful people on this planet, have consequences. I was fucking furious when whilst all this was going on, he can see people trying to get into the Capitol. He can see the carnage that's unfolding in DC, largely in response to his beliefs and his lies about the election. So he goes out there to give his "I'm against violence, don't cooperate with the police aren't the bad guys" speech, which is a sensible thing to do. He should be doing that, right? But he opens up by saying and reiterating the election fraud claims. He's essentially saying, you're absolutely right, by the way, this whole stolen democracy thing did happen, but don't do anything about it for now.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I don't think it's a case of, like, he's not, I don't think it's that he's stupid. He's not stupid. It's just that he's an absolute narcissist, and he doesn't like losing.
Yeah.
And I think a bigger concern was that phone call that he made saying, I want to find
Yeah, find me the votes.
11,000. Find me the votes, basically. I just want to find 11,780 votes in that call to Georgia's Secretary of State. So he will. I mean, in that case, you can see he's using his authority to interfere with an election. Fine.
What's the legal ramifications of telling a sitting president of the United States to go and fuck himself? Because I have to say, listening to a lot of them calls, those Americans were so mild-mannered and professional. Each one of them seemed infinitely more qualified to be in the White House than that fucking Burke.
Well, also, people using the word coup. Oh, this is a coup. This is a coup. Not really. I mean, some of those people were clearly too thick. I mean, I don't think they even know what the word coup means. No offense. But,
it's a coup.
It's coup, innit? So, yeah. I mean, what can you say? It was clearly quite embarrassing, really, for America. I mean, can you just imagine any time in the world when there's a problem in another country's election? They just have no leg to stand on. They really can't say, you know what, guys, this is not the way to do an election. Really? It was just, it was just incredible seeing those scenes at the Capitol. And I'm just glad it's all over now. Although now we have Biden in power, which is another challenge altogether, which we kind of alluded to in our previous podcast, whether for all of Trump's faults, and God, he has so many, is Biden necessarily better because of his, woke agenda? And, if Biden croaks it, which he might do, will we end up getting, President Kamala Harris, or Momala, as her stepchildren call her?
I like that. Yeah, I mean,
Momala.
I mean, luckily, unfortunately, I think our perception of Trump was the correct one, where we pushed back against this idea that he's some neo-Nazi fascist who won't cede power. I've always been of the opinion he talks shit, but when push comes to shove, he'll be out the door in line with the procedures and laws and vote certification process, and that turned out to be the case. He's a one-term president. He didn't do anything to really instill any sort of fascist policies while he was there. He managed to send the chattering classes insane, and a lot of social media commentators. Tell you what, a lot of people will be out of a job and or purpose now he's gone. People who live solely to... I mean, maybe we should talk about that, because another huge aspect of this is that the social media and tech giant overlords decided that in light of what happened in the Capitol, now was the time to pull the plug on Donald Trump's social media accounts. Now,
this is the problem that I have with this, and it's not just about the whole censorship thing. It's that now, so Twitter actually removed his account. I think they then reinstated it after a while, didn't they? Because before that, Twitter would... on certain tweets, they would carry a warning. And then they decided to get rid of his account. And then that prompted what I thought was going to happen, and that was people asking, oh, well, why didn't you do this sooner? Why didn't you do it before? So that's going to be the other issue now. If you remove someone's account, it just makes Twitter look really bad, because then it's suggesting that they do have the power to do this, and they could have done it before as well.
Yeah, it really worries me that some liberals in Silicon Valley can remove a sitting president from social media. I sound like a broken record with this, and every time something like this happens, the refrain will echo around Twitter with, Twitter's a private company, they can do what they want. And
of course they can, but the problem with that is, yes, okay, in theory, yeah, it's a private company, but the problem is, everyone uses Twitter now. Stories break on Twitter, politicians put news out there on Twitter, they put statements out there on Twitter now. So it's not just a private company where you just, spew a load of shit, sharing cat memes. It's a serious platform now. And that's the problem with these social media companies now. They just say that platforms, but really it is the boundary between platform and publisher becoming blurred now,
Yeah.
and that's the problem. Just saying, oh, it's a private company, I don't think it holds true anymore.
Here's what I'm going to say about this. If your entire argument about Twitter banning Trump is all about the terms of service, you are a basic bitch. That's what I think. There is no thought whatsoever gone into that opinion. No acceptance of the nuances, the fact that Twitter's become the public square now, the fact that it is politically influential, the fact that it can win or lose you elections in some parts of the world, the fact that you can basically organise a revolution via Twitter now. Like you say, they need to decide whether or not they're a platform and a publisher, because different rules apply, and they tend to change their mind depending on which rules they want to enforce or ignore. They, for the longest time, Jack especially, has argued that they are in full support of free speech, freedom of expression. I think they once said they are the free speech wing of the free speech party. Now, if that's the case, the free speech in that context, in an American company, would mean the First Amendment. And nothing Donald Trump has said on Twitter violates the First Amendment. Now, I know Twitter's not beholden to the First Amendment, with it being a private company, but so either they're for free speech or they're not. They need to make that clear. I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world for Twitter to say our standard is the First Amendment. They're the limits. If it's not illegal, and there are grey areas, I grant it, things like doxing, but the president saying things you don't like that you think might potentially inspire some violence is not good grounds, in my opinion, for getting rid of one of the most powerful, influential men on the planet. I mean, who are these people accountable to, rather?
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. I mean, Niall Ferguson wrote a piece about this for Spectator a week or so ago, that, a lot of, these social media companies now, they yield so much power, which they never used to have before, and we seem to be okay giving it to them. It's weird. We're happy for them to. On the one hand, we want them to do more, but then we complain when they've got too much power.
I understand it as well, because when I read that he was banned, my first response was, because...
I mean, of course, yeah, we are gonna...
But we need to get past that. We need to get past that political tribalism and look at the bigger picture and realise that any measures that are used against your political opponents exist still. They haven't gone because your political opponents have gone. Them tools remain. And one day, they may be used in the direction of yourself or somebody you do happen to care about. That's how it works. That's why it's about protecting the principle rather than the individuals or the dogmas or your political tribes. You have to say, is this fair if I was on the receiving end of it? Is this fair if somebody I agree with is on the receiving end of it?
Yeah. I mean, like we said before, Twitter had that function where it flagged up a tweet and said this contains factual inaccuracies, or if you retweet something, it says, have you read this article before retweeting it, which is something which I find a little bit patronizing, but I get what they're trying to do. And a few people were suggesting that they could have made more of that warning, made more of when someone has said something that's got blatant inaccuracies or something like that, rather than outright banning somebody. Because, how do they then decide who they're going to ban? Because a lot of people then pointed out, well, you've got, the Chinese state politicians who come out with all sorts of stuff, like, there was a tweet out there
about the Uyghurs.
That claimed about the Uyghurs and how and how it was actually beneficial for them to be, forcibly sterilizing them. I think they deleted either the tweet or maybe the account.
I mean, just from a logistics standpoint, they can't possibly chase down and ban and censor.
You don't have the manpower
exactly.
For it, so you have to focus it and do minimal but effective stuff. Like I said, the flagging up of a tweet, so that at least people can see what has been said about it and then make up their own mind, rather than just simply banning something, because you then make that person out to be a bit of a martyr as well. I mean, banning Trump to his supporters, I mean, it really wouldn't have changed their minds at all, to be honest with you.
Well, I think people just need to try and get this facts into their head, and it's not simply
Facts? What are those?
yeah, alternative facts. It's not simply a private company who can do what they want. It is in essence. However, we've got to understand that social media and Twitter and the way it permeates our culture and politics and news cycle has become something bigger than anything we've had before. It's a new monster. We're not quite sure what to do with it yet. We're not quite sure what it eats. We don't know whether to keep it in the garden. You know what I mean?
Cake.
Yeah, and we haven't quite tamed the beast, as it were, yet. God, I've gone very Partridge, but you know what I'm saying? It's like we don't know what this is yet, this huge monster we've created, and I just feel to be so gung-ho and quick to jump on the side of people shutting down speech in what essentially is the new public square. This is the discussion now. Social media is where the discussion happens.
It is, absolutely.
And as we saw, people usually respond to that with, well, why don't you fuck off and make your own social media? And what happened? People fucked off and tried to make their own social media.
And then that was taken off, was it Parler?
And the tech giants colluded again to remove them from servers and app stores. All the big monopolies, essentially, in this sphere came together and suppressed their competitors. So that, from a capitalist business point of view, is a concern. I'm finding it incredible how many left-wing socialists now are cheering on the unchecked power of big tech.
Yeah, aren't they the ones who always usually moan about big tech as well? You know, they're the ones complaining about big tech surveillance, but then at the same time, they want big tech to start banning people. So you're like, okay, what exactly is it that you want?
Yeah. So if you're going to argue terms of services, yes, Trump probably should have been banned, because terms of services are so vague on Twitter. It doesn't matter what you do, they can ban you and not give you a reason. Fine. Do I think on the balance of public good and free expression he should be banned? No, not at all. Do I think he's responsible for what happened at the Capitol? Yes, he increased the temperature. He certainly had an opportunity to dial it down and he did not. Do I think he's guilty of a crime, i.e. incitement? No. Do I think he should be impeached? Probably. I don't think it'll stick though. We'll see. Your thoughts?
I agree with that. I mean, anyone who suggests Trump wasn't responsible is just being incredibly naive. I mean, he knew what he was doing. Whether he knew to what extent it would rile up people, I don't know. But he's definitely not stupid. He knew something would happen.
He should have told everyone to go home. That's what he should have done. And he could have said that and encouraged that without conceding anything about stolen elections.
I mean, he was wrong to claim the election was stolen, but yeah, you're right. If you know, he could have, but that's the point. That's why he should never have been president. He's just irresponsible,
completely unfit.
He's unfit to be president. And you know, you need. I mean, I could see why people voted for him, why they were fed up of the usual partisan politics, but at the same time he's just unfit, absolutely unsuitable to lead a country. And it doesn't help that America's had 400,000 or more COVID deaths. I mean, obviously that isn't all down to him, you can't blame him for that, but he was hardly behaving.
But he's changed his changed his rhetoric on that depending on where it's politically advantageous. So he's played it down quite a lot, telling people not to be afraid of it when he had it, mocking masks on occasion, things like that. He's definitely not been as strong on it as you would like, and that's the nicest thing I can say. However, on his exit speech, he was championing all the things he's accomplished, and he actually contrasted that with this, I think he called it a terrible plague. You know, he talked about how terrible COVID was, but that wasn't the message. That wasn't the point of, for once, telling us how bad COVID was. Yeah, what he was saying is, can you believe how much I've accomplished, even when we've had COVID going on? Me. That's what he was saying. So
I do wonder, though, and I don't know what you think, but I do wonder what would have happened in the election had we not had the pandemic.
I think he would have won.
Yeah, I mean, I was convinced that he would get a second term, and then the pandemic happened, and I thought, ooh, okay, because Biden was leading in the polls, but you know, polls have been wrong before. But I was certain he would win again, but I think the way he handled the pandemic and everything, calling it the Kung flu. Sorry, but I think that's funny.
That is funny. I don't care what anyone says. That's funny. I'll take a good pun, racially insensitive or otherwise.
But yeah, without it, I think, yeah, you're right. We might have seen Trump 2.0.
So what do we think of Biden then? Because I was of the opinion that he was very vanilla, very boring. He wouldn't do much, but that'd be good. Boring would be good. It'd cool the temperature. It'd make our news cycle slightly more bearable. No, I think...
Is he boring?
I think I may be wrong, is where I'm going with this, because I
think you are wrong.
I think...
Always wrong.
I mean, he's undoubtedly more presidential. For instance, I think he can find the right tone when he gets to a microphone. I think he's less belligerent and petty, but I have seen a lot of belligerence and pettiness from him actually when he's cornered. He tends to get very frustrated when people don't agree with him. I've seen. It seems like he's not organising his thoughts very well. Is the nicest thing I can say about that. Yes.
I call him doddery old Biden.
Yeah.
You know, he's there's been instances where he's confused his son for one who'd died, and you're like, okay. But he, you know, one of the first things he did was to sign off an executive order preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender identity, sexual orientation, which a lot of critics have said that it's effectively removed the rights of 4 million women who work in the federal government. You know, and then after that, the hashtag Biden erased women was trending across social media because he took away women's like sex-based rights, you know, like single-sex bathrooms, shelters, and sports as well. Yeah.
He also Trump banned teaching of critical race theory, didn't he, in classrooms? You know, and he was right. You know, it's anti-American. It proposed, you know, it divides on racial lines. It's pseudo-scientific. It's the liberal left secular version of creationism at this point, in my view. And Trump. And the problem is, this is where Trump becomes a liability, because even if Trump does something right, by virtue of the fact that it was done by Donald Trump, it automatically becomes wrong.
Absolutely. So, like, okay, fine, we get it. Trump isn't nice, but at the same time, you can't just say everything he did was bad. I mean, he was standing up to China. You know, he was the one overseeing peace between Israel and the UAE. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Best pals with North Korea now as well. Yeah. So I think if you look back at Donald Trump's record objectively, and you take out the personality issue, I honestly don't think it'll stand up too badly against previous administrations at all. In fact, there'll be, pandemic aside, it'll be quite positive. But I just feel like Biden has lent into this woke stuff a bit too much. I don't know why we can't have
behind him. What do you expect?
Yeah, I just don't understand why we can't have a nice centre-left, sensible individual who won't pander to esoteric concerns like transgenderism.
What this election has shown is that, you know, the party politics is still there. You know, that's what the election has done. It's just cemented the two-party system. It survived. No one really wants a third party, I guess. And yeah, you're right. I think that's one of the reasons why some people not necessarily liked Trump, but they saw him as a bulwark against all this, you know, so-called wokeism. You know, this very, you know, like the trans agenda. I mean, obviously, I get that, you know, transgender people, they have rights. They deserve to be treated with respect. You know, whatever decisions they make, fine, that your decisions to make. But why do they have to be done at the expense of women's rights? And it's such a niche thing as well, and yet it just seems to dominate the agenda for a lot of people on the left for some odd reason. And Trump was seen as someone who was standing against that kind of tide. But as we know, you can't really stem this tide. I don't know about you, but I'm not very hopeful about the future. I think we've kind of lost this argument long term. Maybe you're more hopeful. Maybe you think the pendulum will swing the other way. I don't know, but it's hard to see it swinging back.
I think we are starting to see signs of it, and I think it's all about giving the tools for people to recognise it when they see it, and letting them feel comfortable opposing it. So the sooner we can give people the confidence and the tools to know that if they raise an objection, there'll be less chance of them being punished for it, or there'll be more people that support their view in the room. I think that's what we need to get to. But it's worth mentioning as well, one of the first things Biden did, which to me, I don't see how this is going to appeal to American mass scale. And if it's a communication issue, fine, but he needs to communicate better. I don't think this is a communication issue, and I'll quote what he said. One of the first things he said in his address, and I quote this verbatim, and this is in the context of federal support for businesses and individuals affected by COVID-19. And he said, our priority will be Black, Latino, Asian, and Native American-owned small businesses and women-owned businesses. So I don't understand.
Yeah, white people, get to the back of the queue.
Yeah, that's how it reads. And I think that's what it means, because surely those that need the help the most should be given it regardless. And why Asians thrown in there, I have no idea.
Yeah, they're all like mega rich. Hello, have you not seen Crazy Rich Asians? Why didn't he just say, look, we're going to prioritise small businesses because they suffered the most? End of. That's it. Just do
everyone.
that.
What a great message. What a great fucking message. Now, I tweeted out my opposition to the way this was termed, and I don't think it's just the way it's termed. I think that's what it means. I think he means what he said. And I was getting gaslit left, right, and centre. But I think like even Matt Dillahunty, someone who I'd kind of been friendly with in the past, I've met in person. I've interviewed him on my podcast twice. We seem to be, we didn't have a relationship really, but we seem to be on good terms. He's gone.
God, is he your girlfriend? Or what?
He's gone full wokerati now. All over Twitter talking about how J.K. Rowling's transphobic. He was trying to say Biden didn't say what he did say to me. Got really pissy, then blocked me about it. I'm going for a good run of being blocked by former
no
allies.
One's blocking me. I mean,
you need to get stuck in.
I need to up the ante. I think I've just got life.
Yeah, maybe you don't argue as much on Twitter as I do, but yeah, I'm slowly working through former allies, which is fun. Might bring me on to Maajid Nawaz if you want to spend a quick 2 minutes talking about the rise and fall of Maajid Nawaz. Now, I'm joking, obviously. I mean, There's a definite tendency in people when they have a disagreement and there's a little bit of drama to sort of burn the bridges and pretend that person wasn't any good anyway. In fact, and I've never really liked them. It's such a childish way to operate. I think we can all appreciate, even though I have problems with the way Matt's dealt with this issue with me, I can still value the fact that no one takes down a religious apologist like he does before he became one, obviously. And Maajid Nawaz, obviously, we've sung his praises numerous times.
We have. I mean, he's founder of Quilliam, which boasted it was the world's first counter-extremism organisation, had so much potential, and he's done a lot of work with Sam Harris. He made that movie, as you recall, the documentary on Islam and Reformation, whether it's possible. And he hosts a show on LBC Radio, which is based in London. And since October, November, he's just been regaling listeners with Trumpian conspiracy.
Full-on crank mode. And I've been poking at it here and there, challenging what he's been saying on Twitter. He would share any old nonsense about, people taking ballot boxes from here and there covertly, Dominion stories, any little bit of cranky bit of conspiracy theory out there, he would propagate it. He would promote it. And I will say this openly, and you can take me to court all you like. He has been promoting dangerous conspiracy theories. We'll get on to
ramming the tinfoil hat
down. And
really hard.
The reason I'm saying that is because he's not sharing these things to say, hey, I'm a neutral, objective, impartial observer here. What do you think?
It's different if you come out and say, look, this is what Trump is claiming. This is what the other side is. This is the truth, or this is what we know, this is what he's saying. It's not a case of him just repeating what Trump is saying.
No, he's constantly implied that these things have some merit to them. He's been implying that there's something going on each time he's done it.
Yeah, do you remember the storming of the Capitol Hill? He tweeted, reports on protesters who stormed Capitol Hill being Antifa. Left-wing anti-fascist movement infiltrators are becoming impossible to ignore. No, they weren't.
And it turned out it was some QAnon conspiracy started about facial recognition software, and it took 2 minutes to debunk. But you should have shared that in the first place.
Then later he accepted. Oh yeah, actually they were Trump supporters.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Oh look, if you mess with elections, that's the only outlet they have." Which, I mean, it's not the only outlet they have. There's so much you can do when you're angry, annoyed at something. Storming the Capitol isn't like number one. But it's worrying. It's absolutely worrying. You know, what is he doing? So Private Eye ran a piece in which apparently he said to his colleagues that he planned to win over Trump's base. And that's why he was doing all of this. And I think, why does the MAGA mob give a shit what some random...
I wonder what Maajid Nawaz thinks about all this.
Hey Don, what do you think Maajid thinks about this and the storming of the Capitol?
Delusions of grandeur. Here's my feeling on Maajid now, and I think this may.
Do you think Messiah, the Netflix program, was based on him or something?
Well,
honestly, he seems to think he's the only one who can solve it.
There's a lot of ego wrapped up in what he's doing, and it's a shame to see. And I just wonder, is there a point and this is where social media comes into the mix, where you reach a peak of success or follower count or audience numbers, and then it becomes, and if you stay engaged in social media to the same extent, it becomes utterly impossible to get a grip on the climate. So, I mean, you look at someone like Douglas Murray, for instance, he's maintained his relationship with social media regardless of how many followers he's received, how successful he's been, and he doesn't seem to have lost his mind to it all. Someone like Sam Harris, for instance, made an actual conscious effort to back away from social media when it started getting a little bit too much, because you could see how much it was stealing from him in terms of time and sanity. And I just feel that as soon as you get to a certain level, unless you've got a good grounding or a good check on it, I just think it gets away from you a little bit. We've seen a little bit of this with, I don't know if you've seen James Lindsay at the minute. I mean, I'm guessing he feels like he's constantly in the trenches. If you feel like you're constantly in the trenches, and that's the experience social media can provide for you, it's no wonder you're currently... Yeah, it's no wonder you're constantly lobbing grenades.
Absolutely. I mean, that should be our hashtag, log the fuck off. I mean, seriously, if it's really that bad, just log out of it. Don't look at it. I mean,
yeah.
I know it's tempted to just go on and look at what's going on. But back to Maajid, yeah, I mean, it's like he can't handle criticism anymore. I mean, he's always been slightly sensitive to it, but this time it's like he kind of threatens people with legal action.
That's my problem.
He's turned into Mo Ansar.
This is why I brought...
Mo Ansar has hacked into Maajid's account.
God, that's the worst insult. You could probably sue you for that. But that's why I'm bringing it... This is the reason I'm bringing it up on this episode, because I'm not bothered that he's blocked me. It's Twitter. It doesn't really matter. It's not real life. And if I'm sure maybe we might be in the same room as him again one day. We can talk, I'm sure. But, so, I mean, Maajid can spread whatever he wants, and we've shared our dissatisfaction with that on a previous episode. But the reason I'm bringing it up now is because he's very quick to be litigious. Now, we've actually said before there is some utility in that, because as you know, the SPLC in America put him on a list unfairly. They defamed him. They put him on a list of extremists that they would then send out to journalists and say, this is for your perusal, this is for your record, so that you don't end up giving this person airtime. They accused Maajid Nawaz of being an extremist, and the reasons they provided were nonsense and unfair, and he tried to engage them in discourse. He tried to challenge them. He tried to have an open conversation with them, and he just got completely stonewalled each time. So he used the one recourse left available to him, which is legal, and he sued them for defamation, and they ended up paying out to him. I don't know if they settled. I don't think it went to court in the end. I think they decided, actually, yes, we've got no legal grounds here. We have made a mistake, and they've settled. Now, I don't like to see that. I don't like to hear it. I think these things should be resolved out of the courts and without the law. But if you've got no recourse left and it's having serious impact on your ability to operate and or stay safe, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. So I sort of tentatively supported that effort. I don't, obviously, I mean, if it was just some random blogger that he was trying to destroy, I might have felt differently, but it was this SPLC multi-million dollar funded, powerful
Just about to mention that,
institution that he went for. So it's not a case of punching down here, is what I'm saying. However, there's a British actor, Eddie Marsden, I happen to quite like. I've seen him in Ray Donovan. He was in The World's End, Simon Pegg, Edgar Wright movie. And he's a chameleon. His range is good. He's a different something in everything I've seen him in. He's very talented, is what I'm saying. He's very liberal left, kind of in his progressive politics on Twitter. But he's been taking shots at Majid for spreading these baseless conspiracy theories, and Majid did not respond well to being called a shock jock. Who's spreading dangerous conspiracy theories.
Yeah, he calls him shock jock who promotes dangerous conspiracy theories, and then he threatened to sue him. So then Martin had to reply, "Oh, I don't understand libel laws. Many people told me there was no libel in this tweet, but as a father of 4, I don't want this hanging over me." I mean,
so he shut down an opinion there. He's saying that this is a blue ticky actor, that is a name. He's someone that people know this guy, and he's got an air of credibility, and he's criticising Majid. Majid does not like that. And there's nothing defamatory in that statement that Majid Nawaz has been spreading dangerous conspiracy theories. He has. Whether or not he's a shock jock, that's entirely subjective. You're not suing anyone for defamation for that.
I mean, that's not exactly libelous, is it?
So I don't think that's what he took issue with, to be fair. But he took issue with the spreading of dangerous conspiracy theories. Now, it was fun to see Private Eye repeat these accusations and actually take them further. And it'll be interesting to see whether Majid Nawaz can now take on this publication that is no stranger to threats of legal action.
I mean, Majid likes Private Eye as well. He's always sharing stuff from them, so oops.
I mean, it was nice to see Nick Cohen take a swing at him on Twitter, digitally, of course, for it, because Nick Cohen's somebody who's wrote passionately in defence of Majid Nawaz before in The Spectator, but took issue with him threatening legal action for an actor calling him promoting conspiracy theory. So that's where I draw the line. This just seems like an effort to shut down criticism to me rather than get justice for being defamed. So we'll see if that goes anywhere. Hopefully it was just a moment of hot-headedness and he won't pursue it any further, but we shall see. Get well soon, Madge. That's still how I feel.
That's it. He's going to sue you for libel now. You're suggesting he's unwell. You're suggesting he's unstable.
Yeah. What should we talk about?
Well, I actually wanted to raise one myself, and that was over an Indian drama on Amazon Prime. I don't know if you've heard of it, but you probably haven't because it's foreign. But it's called Tandav.
Hang on. Is there sporadic dancing throughout?
What? Because it's Indian, they have to dance all throughout. Oh my god, how offensive! I mean, just because the name means dance doesn't mean they're all dancing.
There's dancing, isn't there?
Suing you for libel. Yeah. So basically, it's a political drama. It's sort of like an Indian version of House of Cards. And it's got a really big cast and crew. It's got the megastar Saif Ali Khan. And, you think, politics. It's not that controversial, is it? Or is it? And apparently, the show came under fire from members of PM Narendra Modi's party after its release a couple of weeks ago. Politicians called for the show to be banned, saying it's deliberately mocking Hindu gods and disrespecting, that word, religious sentiments. So basically, there's a scene in this show. I've yet to watch it. It's on my list. But the Prime went down in the house for some reason the other day. Maybe Zionists interfering. So one of the scenes depicts a play in which the Hindu deity Shiva talks about Azadi, which means freedom, and that's a rallying cry from 2019's anti-government protests across the country. And in response to that, some people saying that they were being disrespectful, blah 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 blah. That was the offensive scene, apparently, just a Hindu god shouting freedom. And so the cast and the crew of the show had to make some changes to the series to address the concerns raised, and they apologised after as well.
So have they gone back and edited these quote-unquote problematic scenes then? They've memory hold them in essence?
Apparently so. Now, I've yet to watch the series, so I don't know if they've only taken it down maybe in India, or if they've genuinely just got rid of these scenes full stop. But yeah, the cast and the crew, they all ended up having to apologise.
So is this Amazon produced then, or just Amazon hosted it? I don't know if you know. And I appreciate you haven't made this TV show. It's just I'm coming in blind here. What I'm trying to get a grip on is whether or not Amazon, the company, has capitulated to the demands of religious fascists, or whether the people who made the show have taken it upon themselves to correct it.
Do you know what? I don't know. It might just be that it's bought the rights of it and it's posting it.
Yeah. So what we need to understand really is whenever a business bangs the drum about how ethical it is and how virtuous it is and how much it cares about rights and freedoms and things like that, that's subject largely to what territory they're currently operating in that day, how much money they're making from where, and whether or not certain issues are going to be taboo in certain lucrative territories, whether or not they may lose ad revenue, etc., if they upset cultural norms, things like that.
Well, it was made specifically for and exclusively for Prime, so...
Oh, right. So it's Prime-backed, Prime-funded, Prime money. So they're essentially adhering to Hindu blasphemy codes then, is what we're talking about. I mean, we've seen this before, and obviously Islam gets the biggest kicking for this. It's certainly the one that has the most impact in the West, for sure. However, there's a whole hornet nest of Hindu nationalists.
Oh, and you can't talk about it. If you apparently, like, some people have tried to compare, like whenever you have religious fundamentalist mobs out there, whether they're... So, like, if they're, for example, Sikh or Hindu, and you compare them to, like, say, the Taliban, they get so offended. They're so, how dare you just, compare us to the Taliban, blah, blah, blah. Do you think, well, how exactly are you any better? You're calling for censorship, you're going around, storming around, whipping up mobs. How are you any better? You might not... You see this in a lot of countries now, a lot of religious fundamentalists, and I guess the reason why maybe it doesn't, the Hindu fundamentalist one doesn't seem to raise as many concerns is maybe because it's all in India, and so everyone thinks, it's an Indian problem, or it's a Hindu problem. They're not going around, say, blowing things up, so it's not affecting the world, whereas Islamist terrorism does have a global impact.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange mentality, and it's predominantly religious in character, this idea that it's not enough for me to have my beliefs and me to feel the way I feel about my prophets and gods. I won't be happy until everyone else feels the same or respects my sensitivity around these issues. That's a very strange thing to me, because there is nothing I can't think of something I would want censored or would want a violent reaction to if it was ridiculed, mocked, or depicted in a way I wasn't immediately pleased about. It's just, and we can draw parallels here with the far left and the far right, how censorious they get when their sacred cows and taboos have a spotlight shone on them. So we just need to get to a point, and it's a tricky one, isn't it? You just businesses, and especially media companies, they want an easy life, don't they? They don't want public controversy. They don't want to appear to be intolerant. So they just quietly
I know, but then where
edit.
does it end?
Yeah. Well, that's what you never give an inch to the mob. If you never give an inch to the mob, you never find yourself in this problem. They don't realise as well that if they ignore it, it will go away.
I think that's a problem, isn't it? So it's like with the whole Charlie Hebdo cartoons. I mean, how many people had actually heard of the magazine, let alone seen the cartoons, before a load of these nutters went around drawing attention to it? No one would have really known. It's a small magazine with a small circulation.
I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if you remember either. There's a Katy Perry music video several years ago. I think I did a blog on it, and I have no idea what the song was, but the video was sort of a kind of Egyptian theme, I think. I hope that's true.
I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the dancers who was in the video had a sort of necklace pendant type thing on that just so happened to either represent a verse from Islamic scripture, or it might have even been the word for Allah in Arabic. I can't quite remember. And I assume someone in a costume department just slapped it on him, having no idea what it represents or what it means. However, in the video, he basically turns to dust, and that symbol's destroyed. And there were petitions launched, there was outrage about how that's offensive to Muslims, and the music producers very quietly went into the music video and just edited that little scene out of it, censored it very quietly, just removed it in accordance with people demanding a non-Muslim pop star in the free world adhere to Islamic blasphemy codes. And that worries me. I just think every now and... See, this is the double-edged sword I've got here, because I wish that somebody had just said, no, thank you, and not do anything. But then again, you wouldn't be entirely ludicrous to suggest that would have put Katy Perry's security concerns through the roof.
Well, the thing is, who decides to get offended and then draw everyone's attention to it? I mean, what are you achieving by doing that? I mean, if you want to be personally angered, fine, you go seethe away in the corner, but why do you want other people to be offended as well? What's that going to achieve?
And it never stops. I don't think people understand that feeding this mentality and giving them what they want will not prevent them from continuing. It is a mindset. It is a way of existing. They're not going to say, well, thank you for doing that one thing for me, and I shall go quietly into the night, never to be heard from again. There will be something else that they'll demand. It's a mentality, it's a mindset. It's not, I have got one gripe, and if you sort that out for me, we're all tickety-boo. It's the way these people behave and believe and think and act full time. That's the issue.
But, I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, you know, we've talked about censorship before, and how, you know, you thought maybe the pendulum was going to swing the other way against it, and I don't know if you still think that now. I just think that, you know, nowadays people seem to just be more inclined to banning things, you know, rather than actually engaging in something. Like, if you don't like something, don't watch it, don't read it, don't look at it. You know, how hard is that? You know, it's different if someone's, you know, going around rubbing it literally in your face and you have to do something. But, you know, you've got the choice to actually engage with something. And, you know, if there's a program on that you think might be offensive, then don't look at it. It's as simple as that. Why is it that we're just so... A lot of people are so inclined to call for things to be banned? I mean, how is that? What's that going to achieve?
I understand as well, like, if you are offended and you do have strong views about it, you can espouse them views and you can say what you think, and that's valid. That's part of the discussion. You can complain if you want. It's when you make demands of censorship. You demand that something should not or cannot be seen. You decide on behalf of everyone else what's acceptable for them to place their eyes or ears on because of your cultural or religious or political sensitivities. And that's not good enough for me. I don't want somebody else to be able to decide what it is I can and can't see. And I would never demand that for myself. If I see something, let's say, for instance, I see some gentleman in a mosque basically calling for jihad, I'm going to write about that. I'm going to tell you what I think about that. I mean, obviously, that's not a great example because obviously that's illegal.
Well, actually, that's... Hang on a minute.
But if he's sharing especially homophobic views, for instance, I'm going to make a point of that. I might even write a blog. I might even talk about it on the podcast. What I won't say is that he has no right to speak or he should be arrested. You know.
Oh my God! If you're doing that, my God, I'd have to like bloody censor like everyone I know.
Well,
seriously, I have to censor family discussions as well.
This might bring us on. You know, in keeping in the realm of people getting offended over things and state action being taken. This might bring us on to one more topic, and I shall read the headline from The Guardian, and this is a very UK-centric story. A lot of Americans will be scratching their head at this. But the headline is, UK police officer charged over offensive George Floyd meme. Now, George Floyd obviously was the man unjustly killed in Minnesota in May last year, I think it was. So I'll read from The Guardian. It says, a police officer has been charged with a criminal offence for allegedly sending a grossly offensive meme of George Floyd to colleagues in a WhatsApp group. Now, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, he's a police officer. Second of all, if he's sending memes mocking the death of George Floyd to his fellow police officers and colleagues, I don't have an issue really with his employer taking issue with that. Maybe he does deserve some sort of disciplinary action. Maybe he does deserve to be fired. That's for them to decide. I'm all right with that. The issue I have really is the fact that he's been charged with a crime. And part of the issue of this story is we're not allowed to see the meme because sharing the meme is a crime, apparently. So we can't even see what it is. Now, bear in mind, a lot of people will be like, in their heads, well, this must have been fucking horrific. This must have been atrocious. No, not really. Not for someone to get charged under the Communications Act.
No, I'm sorry, you can't. This is what happens. Like, people just, they're very, very trigger happy when it comes to applying the law like this. I mean, for God's sake, it should have to be a last resort to charge someone.
Seems like a very knee-jerk reaction. A lot of people are assuming it's racist in nature as well. So, I mean, first of all, somebody had said, I'd seen somebody, I mean, we're not allowed to see this meme. Somebody had said that the meme depicted George Floyd having his head kneeled on by the police officer. And there was either a caption or something else to suggest that this, they was using it as an advertisement for the latest cushion. They were making a joke about his head.
Ooh, okay, that is really tasteless.
I will agree. It's tasteless. I wouldn't laugh at it. I don't think I'd like the kind of. I don't think I'd like the kind of person spreading that kind of thing. Sure. Now, my entire point is, doesn't matter how distasteful it is, it shouldn't be a criminal offence. I will go one further, which I probably don't need to. I don't think you should be arrested if it is racist. I don't think you can police racist attitudes in this country unless you are using race as a bar of discrimination. If you are just espousing racist views in a private WhatsApp group, no less, I don't think the old bill should be hauling you off to the courts. That's how I feel. And people really struggle with this because people don't hear what I'm saying when I say this. What they hear is, I want to be able to share racism. I like sharing racism. Racism is good. No, racist a scumbag. Sharing racist memes makes you a scumbag. You are a scumbag, and society should be able to point at you and go, there's the scumbag. I just don't think the state should be able to lock you up and charge you for it. That's all. That's all I feel. I think that's just overreach. I think we need to find that line between tackling racist sentiment and making it a crime at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes, but how do you feel about the criminalisation of memes, which is essentially what we're talking about here?
It's fucking stupid. I mean, I'm sorry, don't police officers have anything better to do? Actually, no, they don't, do they? There's a pandemic going on. They're probably going around checking if people are wearing their masks correctly or having any raves right now, and sharing offensive memes. That's how low they've sunk investigating memes. I mean, for God's sake, like you said, it's between him and his employer, and also between the person who grassed on him. I mean, nobody likes a grass.
What a dobber!
Snitches get stitches. Yeah.
There's another thing as well. Like
that's not incitement to violence, by the way. Can I just put that out there on the record?
People could not possibly fathom the possibility that it is possible to make jokey and offensive memes about the death of George Floyd that have absolutely nothing to do with his skin colour whatsoever. People just assumed this was racist. And the reason they're assuming that this was racist is because George Floyd is black. So they're making assumptions about this based on the skin colour of the subject, which is racist. However, I don't think it should be illegal. I don't think you should end up in jail for it. Certainly shouldn't be charged with a crime for it. You know, what I think's happened here is that we saw this horrific act play out in America. BLM responded to it across the globe. We had protests in the UK. The issue of systemic racism in our own police force came up. And our police officers are like, what the fuck have we done? We've not shot any black people. However, that, you know, it was all over the news. It was massive. And I think what they've seen here, they've seen a potential scandal. And it is a scandal. They've seen one of their police officers sharing a meme about one of the most inflammatory figures in the world of activism over the last year or so. And they thought, what is the toughest possible response we can place on this person to show everybody that we're not institutionally racist, that we care about black lives and we're not racist? What can we do to show that we oppose this in the strongest possible terms? I just think it's a massive overreaction. I think fire the guy, fine. He sounds like an arsehole, but charging him seems a bit much.
It's just like you were saying before. I mean, surely our police officers should have something better to do with their time. Or clearly not. I think it's the same with you know how police officers. Was it in Derbyshire again? They arrested 2 women out for a walk during lockdown, and because they had a coffee or a tea, they said it constituted as a picnic, and so they fined them, and then it became a big story. So they had to just take that back and say, "Oops, you know, takesy backsies. We're not finding you now." But it just shows you the level of stupidity that there is out there and what can happen when you're just too bloody gung-ho about these things.
I'm not bothered about the 2 women outside having a walk. I'm annoyed about the 400 people strong Orthodox Jewish wedding in Stamford Hill where they blacked out the windows. They knew what they were doing. I'm annoyed about the 200 people strong raves I keep reading about in London. That's what I'm annoyed about. I'm okay with people.
Don't act like it's all London, okay? There's been loads of... Excuse me. Actually, I think you'll find that GMP has handed out more fines for people raving than in London. So.
Is that true? Well, now well, you know, it is Manchester, isn't it? Mad for it. Now I'm actually going to spin this round and be proud of the fact our raving culture is just more influential. That's a win. Yeah,
okay.
I'm not a zealot about lockdown, but I do get annoyed with people blatantly taking the piss.
Yeah, there's a difference between maybe bending the rules a little bit, which I think a lot of people are doing, and...
but for the purposes of legal incrimination, neither of us have. Exactly. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
I mean, there's a difference between you going out for a walk in the fresh air, which, let's face it, is good for your health. There's a difference between going out for a walk and then having a wedding full of 400 people. I mean, 400 people. Wow, what a small wedding. I mean, God, our weddings get twice as many numbers. What a shit party that must have been. Yeah.
Well, when do you feel we'll start seeing some sort of lifting of restrictions? We're about 70 to 80% through vaccinating the most vulnerable in society. I think when we've cleared that number, we should immediately start lifting things. But I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a scientist. So I will defer my thoughts to them. I will appeal to authority because I don't know what I'm talking about. I think anyone who's not qualified in this area should start any opinion on lockdown with, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I just think that's fair. I think science is one of them rare areas of discourse where appeal to authority is actually smart and not necessarily fallacious.
I mean, I think the vaccine thing is good news because I remember last year I was saying without a vaccine, there's no way out of this, and if there's no vaccine in the future, then we're going to have to be more pragmatic about this, and then lo and behold, get a bloody vaccine. But even then, it just seems to be that we're going to have restrictions for a very, very long time, and you know, I don't know about you, but I'm just getting so fed up. I'm getting lockdown fatigue. I'm really, really getting fed up of all of this. I just don't see an end in sight. I mean, I know the theory was that once we vaccinate the most vulnerable, that will see a rapid decline in cases and hospitalizations and deaths. So Therefore, we should be able to return to normal. But I don't know if I even see that happening. I can't see life returning to normal this year. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. But
I will settle for the reopening of bars, cinemas, etc. with social distancing measures. I could cope with that. I was one of them people that when things did open again, albeit in a restricted manner, I went out. I went to a cinema, I went to a pub, things like that. Well, whilst all the time maintaining that, I didn't do anything illegal. I did exactly what I was asked. And what was expected, because you have to, if you can, find that line between protecting the vulnerable and keeping the economy running at the same time. There are businesses just dying left, right, and centre, and it becomes a case of weighing up whether or not we're going to approach the point of no return, and we already have, in fact, for a lot of these businesses and livelihoods. So it's much bigger than me, this problem.
Well, the thing is now they're talking about having an Australia and New Zealand style ban on flights. Now, I at the beginning was very much in favour of having a ban on flights, or at least at the minimum testing people at the borders, because it's the best place to test people. There's nowhere for them to go, really. They can't leave and they can't enter, so you can test them and quarantine them if necessary. And so many people who like New Zealand and Australia's approach for having practically zero COVID for most of 2020, they're saying, oh, this is fantastic, we should have done what they did, we would have had no cases. I don't think that's true. You can't really compare our country with theirs. I mean, Heathrow alone gets about 18 million passengers a day, and whereas Australia is nowhere near that figure. Australia does not get as many visitors, and nor does New Zealand. New Zealand population is a lot lower as well, and they're all sparsely populated. So you can't really say, having a ban on flights is going to have the same impact. But I think some measures should have been taken to at least stop people just coming in without being checked. I mean, it's just stupid.
Yeah, I did see a lot of reports of that. People on Twitter basically saying, I've just waltzed through Heathrow to no fanfare whatsoever.
Yeah, that could have been an effective measure. How effective? I guess we just don't know. A lot of these things we just don't really know. But, doing that would have been better than just letting people in and out. But all these people at the same time saying, oh, Australia's managed it, we can. Logistically, it's a bit of a nightmare because, like I said, we've got millions of people entering on a daily basis. And then on top of that, where do you quarantine them? Because, it's going to be more expensive as well. But I mean, you can do that in New Zealand when only, say, 5 people are turning up. Yeah, you can easily lock them up somewhere. But how do you do that in England, where an international hub? It's not as easy.
At least it's feeling slightly more positive in the sense that the virus does have a vaccine now and it is being rolled out. It seems like there's light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm staying positive that this year we will start to get some semblance of life back again, assuming there's anywhere to go when all this ends. But I think unless you want to get something in, my bladder is full, which is usually a good point to stop recording. Is there anything you wanted to say before I let you get back to your evening, or I wet myself?
I just want to go dancing again. That's what I miss.
Where did you go? So you're dancing with other people, so it's like a dance class kind of thing?
Yeah.
It's one of my phobias, having to dance in public.
So was mine. That's why I took up dancing.
That's why I took dance classes, yeah, that makes sense. And on that note, I think we've about nailed it for the first time this year.
We have, yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Right, I'm gonna go and do a pee. Can't think of a professional way to end this conversation. Thank you for listening to the Godless Spellchecker podcast. The podcast is a one-man operation, produced in my spare time away from my day job, and I love making it for you. If you enjoy what you hear, please consider lending some support. The show is entirely listener supported. I don't sell anything, I don't run ads, and given the alternative and unpopular focus of my content, it's very unlikely to find a sponsor. So there are a number of ways you can support and chip in and help improve the show and give me more time to produce more content. You can become a patron supporter and pledge a monetary amount per month or per episode by visiting patreon.com/gspellchecker. If you can't lend monetary support right now, don't worry, there's other ways you can help the podcast too.
You can share it on your various social media networks, or take a moment to leave a review wherever you listen to it. Your support is massively appreciated. Thank you. Think we've all learned something here today?